Welcome to another episode of the Candid Couch. I'm here with my beautiful wife.
Hello. Welcome back.
How you guys doing today? Thank you for joining us for another episode. This is a weekly podcast where my wife and I discuss amazing topics and we get into the nitty gritty. Talk about God, marriage, and a bunch of controversial stuff, life, all that good stuff. Thanks for joining us. Please like, share, subscribe. And
if this is your first time, welcome. If you're coming back, we thank you for your attendance once again.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to the question of the day.
All right, so here we go. Our question of the day today. How do you know that you are ready for marriage? How do you know? Definitely want to hear your point. Let me hear.
To answer that, I don't really think you really know when you're ready to be married. I think that there's ways you can prepare. Like, obviously, there's some definites that you need to kind of like do. Like, for instance, you need to have a job, you need to have money saved, you need to have a place to bring your wife home to. The basics, right? I also, in my opinion, it's best looking back now. Looking back, I would say I would have done some things differently. I had the place, I had the job, I had the money saved, I had the apartment and whatnot. But I would have done therapy. I would have done things to kind of work on my emotional, my mental state before. I think that would have prepared me a lot in terms of marriage because I never been married before, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. In the sense of the details. Obviously, we all want to be married, that companionship and having someone to hold at night and someone to laugh with and someone to argue with, let's be honest, right? But yeah, I mean, there's some ways you can prepare, but for the real issues, I mean, you just kind of got to roll with the punches because, I mean, you go to therapy and talk about the things that's going to happen. But yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Well, I think the question is like, how do you know? So, like, what are some of the ways that you know, or like that you feel, oh, I'm ready for marriage now?
Answer it.
No, I'm saying you didn't answer it.
What do you mean?
You basically said some of the things that can prepare you for marriage, but the question is, how do you know that you're married? Like, what is it that makes you say, okay, now this is the time, now I'm ready, I've got this, I've got that, I know this.
All right. If you want to put it like that, like I said, the basics. You're not living with your parents. You're living on your own. You have income. You have a job or career. You have things lined up to prepare to bring your wife in, to move in with you, or go get a place together. You're established as an adult. I mean, I think those are basic requirements, in my opinion. Obviously, open for love, open for, what's the word I'm looking for? Open for, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice and yeah, things like that. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I can be on both sides of the spectrum of this question, to be honest with you. Because I think that there's a difference between like being prepared and being ready. Like, I think preparation is whatever you can do to sort of get yourself in right position for a new transition. So, for example, if you are trying to buy a house, you can prepare yourself by getting your credit together, saving money, reaching out to realtors. Like, that's preparation. But you still don't know what it means to be a first time home buyer. You know what I mean? So, are you ready?
Well, in that case, you don't know then. I mean, how do you know when you're ready for marriage? You don't know if you're ready for marriage because you've never been married before. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, that's why I'm on both sides of the spectrum because I think you can prepare, but as far as being ready, like my question is, I guess within this question is how do you become ready for something if you don't know like what that entails? Like if you've never been married before, how do you know even how to get ready? I mean, there are the basics, that people talk about. And then there are the things that are like a given, like don't get married if you're still living with your parents, like you want to have a place to live, you want to be financially stable. But I guess to answer the question, to wrap it up, like for me, I don't know if there is a solid way to know you're ready for marriage.
I don't know. I might disagree with that. And I only say that because there's things you can do to kind of like have like a check. If you could do like a pros and cons or like a checklist, you can do some research. Like what are some things that married people go through? Watch some videos, talk to some people, talk to married folk. Do counseling, and
But
if you
for
have
me,
a
like I said, that's the difference between ready and prepared. What you're talking about is preparation, right?
in a way. But like if you have that checklist and you talk to married folk who've been married 20, 30 years or watch videos and this, that, and the other, and kind of have that checklist and you kind of ask yourself, am I emotionally available? Check. Am I selfless? Check. Am I prepared to take care of them financially? Check. Am I like if you go through that route, like, oh, I think I'm ready to take care of another person. I think I'm ready for marriage. Obviously, there's going to be some wild cards in there when you actually do get married because things are going to come up because you're two different people. I mean, it's just an adjustment for every single person. But I think there is a way you can know that you're ready in a sense, but obviously you're not ready for everything. I think you're ready for some things, like I said, the basics or whatnot. But
I guess all in all for me, I guess I can say or feel that you're ready when you're at peace with the decision. If there are still things that may be unresolved, maybe you're not ready. Like maybe like if the night before or a couple weeks before the wedding, you still have things in your mind like I don't really know if he the one. I don't really know if he's gonna be a good dad. I don't know if he's gonna be a good husband. Like I guess if there are still some unresolved things in your mind, maybe you're not ready. But like I said, I think you can be prepared and not ready, and then I guess there are some ways, I guess what you're saying are good ways to know, like to gauge. I guess if you feel ready. But I don't think there's any list like, okay, I can check this off. I'm ready. I'm ready. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's case by case. It depends on the person and it depends on the relationship.
also, I agree with that, but I also think that sometimes you got to move on faith as well. You're not going to know all the details. Like if God has somebody for you, and you're the type of person that's super detailed and need to know every single bit of that person, and obviously you need to know the person who you're marrying, but there's gonna be some things you don't know. You're gonna find out when you're married because you're not living with them. You don't know every single detail. But yeah, there's a faith that you have to walk in when you get married as well. You know what I mean? And trust God that this the person that you've prayed for, and and work through it. It's about marriage is about work. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can agree with that part. So we got a video. I actually, first of all, let us know in the comments what you guys think. How do you know that you're ready for marriage? How do you know that you're prepared for marriage? How do you know if you're doing the right thing, basically? So we have a clip that we are basically going to respond to. This is a clip that I believe I found it on TikTok. It was either TikTok or Instagram, but we're going to play that clip and then we're going to basically talk about it a little bit.
Your views on marriage. What do you think?
I would have loved to have gotten married earlier in my career, but my career was the most important thing. So I was no good. I was a terrible father. I probably was a terrible brother, a terrible son. I definitely was a terrible boyfriend because football was the most important thing. Right. I was consumed with that. And I was consumed with that because I wanted to get my grandmother and my family out of the conditions that I grew up in. And I said if I had kids, I didn't want them to spend 1 hour, let alone a year like I spent. So I focused on that. That was the only thing that mattered.
Right.
And I had a lot of women say they could be okay with being with number two to football. But when it came right down to it and they see how devout I was in it, they couldn't be.
Right.
And I said, okay. But now I started to realize as I've gotten older in my life, everything that I've accumulated doesn't mean anything if I don't have anybody to share it with.
All right, that was a clip from Shannon Sharp on his podcast called Club Shay Shay. So give credit to that. It's a pretty good clip. I mean, I agree. The fact that he said that, uh, excuse me, the fact that he said that he would have been no good if he got married when he was younger because football was his whole life basically. I don't think you're in a great position mentally or in your mind and your spirit or whatnot to be able to take someone's hand in marriage when your focus is clearly on something else because the other person loses in a way. You know what I mean?
But I tell you what, I can definitely respect that he was honest about it. Like he didn't try to get married even though he
Right.
felt that way and like put some woman through some crazy mess knowing that he couldn't be able to commit himself in that way, his time, his focus. Like at least there was a honesty there like, look, you ain't going to be number 1, and at least he didn't go down the path of going through a divorce and doing this and this and that,
Hurt people.
because of it. Right.
I think it sucks though on his part. I understand the purpose why he was doing that to take care of his family. I mean, who doesn't want to do that, especially if they're in a bad situation. But it kind of sucks because if you think about it, I think he's 55 or in his 50s now. Almost his whole life, he hasn't. I mean, he could have had someone in that regard in terms of marriage and family and whatnot, but he chose to, I guess, in a way, chose money or his career. But now he's alone now, and I mean, you got all this money, all this fame, all these things, and you don't have nothing, no one to share it with. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, I mean, you don't want to bring someone into a situation that can cause trauma for them. So I get it.
And it does kind of sound like maybe he might, I don't want to say regret, but maybe he might be thinking differently about that decision now that he's a little bit older. Like it definitely sounds like if I would have known what I know now, like he made the comment of like, everything I've gained, it doesn't mean as much because I don't have somebody to share it with. I think maybe if he knew that earlier in his career, maybe he would have been able to try to balance the two. I mean, there are a lot of athletes that are married. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak on it because I don't know what that entails, but I know that it's got to be hard on both parties. So, like I said, there's a good and a bad. The honesty and the transparency of saying I couldn't really be present with you. I mean, I think benefited him in that way, but I do think that, he was expressing that, he wasn't ready and he missed out on those things because he wasn't ready.
Right, exactly. It always comes down to a choice. What do you want? What's most important? Some people choose their career. Some people choose the money and the things things that they really are passionate about over that family dynamic. But I mean, at the end of the day, when you get older, I mean, yeah, you're not really gonna be thinking, "Oh, I made millions of dollars." You're gonna be thinking, oh, "Wow, I have all these offspring. I have these children, grandchildren. I have a spouse, I have a beautiful family. Look at all this that we've created." That's more or less long lasting than money. You know what I mean? I feel like it doesn't fulfill you. I feel like a family will fulfill you more than money would. So, of
But I will say this though, I think there's an importance of not rushing. So
course,
if he knew within himself, because that's important too. Like you have to know within yourself, am I getting ready to mess everything up for myself and for another individual because I'm not ready for this. I'm not mentally ready. I'm not spiritually ready. I'm not financially ready for this. Having the transparency to be like, now is not the time, I think can save you a lot of trouble in the end. And rushing into things, specifically a marriage, like rushing into a marriage can be the detriment of a lot of different things, but also people. Like if you really think about divorce, if your child's a divorce, you can speak on the fact that there's a domino effect there. I don't think there's any children of divorce that can say, it didn't affect me. It didn't affect me at all. So sometimes if you say, I'm not ready to marry somebody, I'm not ready to have kids, it could save hurt for multiple people down the
for a lot
line.
of people, yeah. I mean, that's the reason why that. I mean, what we believe that. I mean, divorce isn't really. What in our opinion, I don't think it's an option. I mean, because it hurts way too many people. I mean, people that you've grown and have connections with. Like, for instance, if we had gotten if we were to get a divorce, how many people would be hurt? All our nephews, your parents that I've built a connection with, and my parents' connection with you, and our nieces and nephews and whatnot. It's just it will hurt a bunch of people just because we didn't want to work through it or figure it out or have faith in God that He would sustain us in that way. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I get it though. I mean, you got to be smart about what's best for you and what you can handle. Because, like you said, you don't want to bring somebody into a situation where they can get hurt in terms of, yeah, I want to marry you just to marry you, just to, and then I'm gonna go ahead and be passionate about my football, and then I never see you. That you could have just let that person go and be happy with somebody else. And so yeah, I get it.
And you have to be stable. You have to be stable in yourself as an individual first, right? Like, I'm going to get married to somebody and I don't even have a real foundation of who I am as a person. There could be error there. Now, while I will say, as a wife and a mother, I do find a lot of my identity in being those things, but you have to be someone outside of those things. You have to have an identity outside of the roles that you play. So if I'm someone who is not solid in who I am as a person, I don't know myself as a person, I'm not comfortable with myself as a person, like low self esteem, maybe I haven't worked through my childhood issues, like those are things you have to think about before you take on a role as a parent and a role as a spouse. Like, and that's why I think therapy is so important, because we always say it, like, your spouse is a mirror. So if you haven't ever really looked in that mirror of like, these are the things that you struggle with, it will definitely show up in marriage. And it's not to say that it shouldn't, because it very much should show up in marriage. Like we talked about last week, marriage can be a structure for character building. So if you do have flaws, they will come out in marriage. They absolutely will present themselves in situations. But I think that through therapy, you can work through, hey, this is why I'm argumentative. And that could save you from, down the line making a mistake. This is what I need to do to fix this in order to have a good relationship with another person. Hey, maybe I struggle with mental health. This is what's going to help me later down the line in a relationship with a person. This is what's going to prepare me for a healthy relationship if I work on myself, financially. Now, I'm not a person that really believes that only men should be financially stable coming into a marriage. Um, I believe women should also be financially stable coming into a marriage. Anything can happen, right? You can get married, and 3 months after you get married, your husband loses his job. And let me tell you, finances is a fight that you don't want to have when you're already dealing with sort of the honeymoon phase. Like, we're just getting to know each other as a married couple outside of the realm of just boyfriend girlfriend, and now we've got this huge hurdle on top of all the other things. It can create issues. So I think both parties should be financially stable, like, coming into it. And I think it can, being that way, can avoid, like we said, issues down the line. And it's one of those things that can help with the preparation of marriage, especially when it comes to paying for a wedding, depending on how you go about it.
Right, exactly. I think that kind of tackling those hidden um what's the word I'm looking for? Those hidden obstacles in your life. Like you said, you brought up the childhood stuff. Like, I mean, therapy is definitely very important for pre and while you're in marriage. Especially in the beginning, while you're kind of gelling your lives together and becoming one. I think that the because most people don't really know why they are the way they are. Some people don't know why they act the way they act, or they have certain habits, or they think a certain way. And at 9 times out of 10, it does have to do with childhood, how you was raised, what your parents, what you saw your parents do, or what something happened to you, or whatnot, and that affects you when you're connecting and becoming one with someone else. And sometimes without even therapy, you kind of see those traumas or obstacles are highlighted when you connect with someone, because like you just said, when you're married, it's like a mirror. So it's like you see yourself, and sometimes you don't like what you see when you see yourself. Like, man, like, I'm really this person. How come I didn't see this before I met you? Because I mean, how can you know that? There's no conflict. There's nothing challenging you and your processes. There's nothing challenging or questioning why you do things. You're just doing what you do. What's your normal, your day to day, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think that um tackling these hurdles are, I mean, very important.
Let me ask you this. So, from a personal standpoint, and I guess you can answer this first and then I'll answer it with like my experience of it. But as people who are only 5 years into our marriage, would you say when we got married that you were ready for marriage?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I was not. There was a lot of things that I wish I would do different. I could have done differently, rather. One, I wish. I mean, I had the place. I had a good job. I had those things lined up, but there were some things that I never really targeted or focused on in my life kind of that kind of made me who I was, or made me do the things that I did, the things in my life. So obviously those things were highlighted when I got married, because we talked about the mirrors. So no, I don't think I was ready at all. I mean, I never went to therapy until marriage, until we got married. So I mean, I would like to go back to therapy again. We haven't been in a while, but I would like to go back. Because I don't think therapy is healthy at any stage. To kind of, even if you feel like you're in a good place, I mean, there's always something you can work on. So I think that for me, I don't think I was ready. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I would have done a lot of things differently. I would have been a lot. I mean, like I think we discussed this before on the podcast, but my wife was my first girlfriend, and I married her, so I didn't have a lot of history with or experience with having other girlfriends. So there's a lot of things I just didn't know. So it was a learning curve for me from the jump. So it was that, and then the selfishness that I had, because I was by myself, and having that, used to just being by yourself, doing what you want to do when you want to do it all the time, and you get to choose everything you want to do. Now you have to consider someone else feelings and what they might want to eat, or what they might want to, where they might want to go. It's a little uncomfortable at first. You're like, man, I really don't want to do that, but you got to kind of die to yourself in the sense, like, all right, I'm gonna let them get this one, and I get the next one. And sometimes you don't really get that in the beginning. I mean, it takes time to kind of like lower your pride and be humble in the sense, and like, all right, I'm gonna let them get this, and the next time I'll get mine. Like, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that shows growth and maturity, and a lot of things. And I think I have grown in that way. I'm still growing, like I said, we're only 5 years in. That's nothing, compared to some of these other people in 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, 5 years, you gotta look at it like a child. We're basically 5 years old right now. So we're developing, we're making good strides, but we're still young, we're still learning. So what about you?
When we met, I was how old?
When we met, you was 20, I was 22.
When we met, I was 20 years old. And as a kid, 20 seems really grown. Like 20 seems like a goal. Like, oh, I'm an adult now. At 20, now that I'm 28, I look back at 20 like I was a kid. Like I was a kid. I had no idea about anything. And now I was a mature kid, but I definitely I just didn't know everything I thought that I knew.
We think we're mature at that time, though.
Until you really hit, like, marriage is a huge growing up thing. Like it's like you have to grow up. Um and I'll never forget, I'll answer the question in a second, but this story just came to my mind. But I'll never forget our first premarital counseling session. We were so excited. Like we were like, we set the date for the wedding. We're about to go talk to the counselor. We're about to get everything set. We just gonna have this little conversation so we can work some stuff out. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be cool. Maybe we go grab something to eat afterwards. So we went to the session or whatever, and we basically ended up, it wasn't an argument, but we ended up doing some back and forth. Stuff started to come out that we hadn't ever talked about. Stuff started to come up that I didn't know he felt that way. Stuff started coming up he didn't know I felt that way. And our counselor looked at us and said, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of immaturity there. And I remember thinking immaturity, but now looking back, there absolutely was. I'm 20 years old, at the time when we were engaged and getting married, I was about 23. So I'm thinking man, we've been doing this for years. What do you mean immaturity? We had no idea. Our first premarital session was so rough that on the car ride home, we didn't say anything to each other. We didn't say anything to each other. There were no words said. When we got home, there were no words said. And I remember crying, going to sleep that night, crying, I'm not ready. He's not ready. What are we doing? And I think that was the first time I ever stopped in my tracks to be like, oh my gosh, there's all these issues. There's all these things. And I'm the type of person, sometimes I could be super deep. I'd be taking things as signs that ain't really signs. And I'd be like, he told me you wasn't the one. And that's not really what happened. But I take signs as signs. Even the night before we got married, I called him and we were in a hotel, with all our people, and we just got finished celebrating. And I remember calling him, and I was just like, hey, about to go to sleep. How you feeling about this? And he was like, yeah, I'm good. Just got done with the fellas, probably gonna turn in soon. And that was it. And in my mind, I was like, he's going to tell me how much he loves me, how much he's so happy to have me as his wife tomorrow. Like, he's going to pour his heart out to me. When I wake up, I can't wait to be your husband. And I'm just so excited. And you're the best thing that ever happened to me. So even the night before our wedding, I went to sleep. Like, he didn't say nothing like sweet. He didn't like serenade me or nothing. Like, is he really the one, God? Like, I really went to sleep the night before our wedding. Like, this can't be it. Like, this can't be. Is this a sign? Like, and I was so nervous that I thought everything was a sign. But now I look back, I really wanted to be ready. I really wanted to be ready. But I can't say that now looking back at the people we are now, looking back at 23, and you were what, 25?
Yeah.
Now looking back at 23 and 25, we weren't. And there was not many things that we could have done because me and my husband, when we were dating, we had all the necessary conversations. We had all we did was talk. We had conversations about 20
Everything.
years down the line. What are our kids going to look like? What do we want for them? How do we want to raise them? We talked about everything. When we get old, where are we going to live? We talked about everything. We talked about our first house on like our third date. What do you what kind of, we were talking about the future. And I think to some extent that made us feel like we were ready, like, oh, we done already talked about everything.
Mhm.
And after that first session, I think it hit us like maybe you're not as ready as you think you are. But I have to say, whatever it was that we were unprepared for that first year was like a boot camp for like, all right, we can't sweep this under the rug no more. All right. We can't put this in the cabinet no more. All right. We can't lock this in the car and leave it there no more. Like, we got to open these boxes and we have to deal with these issues. We can't stuff it away no more. And I think that that was when we really realized we may not have been ready, but now that we're in it, we got to work on it.
Right, exactly. I mean, that story is funny, like looking back. But I
It is
mean,
kind of funny now.
if
Looking
if you
back.
if you look at it, it's a blessing that we were able to expose a lot of the things that we did during that therapy session, and because if we hadn't, we would have gone on as if everything was peachy and fine. And almost subconsciously, we feel like we feel it doesn't feel like genuine because we're not really open, in a way, and that's not sustainable. I don't think because I mean, marriage is about like being open, having an open book, and I mean, we learned that, and it's interesting because, like I said, it's not sustainable because like it's that going back to that mirror thing. I mean, we see each other and we know each other. I mean, it's best to get that therapy in. I'm telling you, it hurts at first, but then it starts to feel better after a while. Um, yeah, I mean, it's the truth.
And I want to end off with this. I want to say this to young married couples. I consider getting married at 23 and 25 to be pretty young. I know people who have gotten married at 18, 19, 20, that's considered being married young. I will not say that I don't agree with getting married young, because for us and our mindset, it was, we've been doing it. I mean, we were together for 3 years before he proposed. We've been doing this for so long. It's like, we in this. I'm committed to you. You committed to me. The age wasn't a factor because I think the maturity was more of a factor. I don't think our immaturity was solely based on our age. But I will say this, I'll never be the one to discourage a young couple from getting married, because I know a lot of people that will say like, you're too young to get married, wait till you're in your 30s and you did this and you did that. Like, I knew my husband when I got my first car, you know. Um, I was with my husband when he got his first apartment. I remember sitting in his first apartment with him, and I was like eating a sandwich and watching him put the TV stand together, like, wow, when you watch somebody grow through the different stages, it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes we want people who have arrived. We want to wait until we have arrived to get married. And I just don't think that that's realistic. If you are in a building stage, that's not a reason not to get married. Sometimes it's going to take time to build, and sometimes it's better to build together. So I wouldn't say like, oh, you too
It's a
young to
beautiful
get
thing.
married. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to build together.
Yeah. And the whole idea of I want a man, us women, sometimes we want a man who's arrived. Like, I'll tell you this, and this is no shade to my husband. This is actually praise to him for his
Growth.
not growth. Well, yeah, growth, but there was a different word.
Maturity.
Maturity, growth. There was a stronger word, but it left me. But
Find it.
When me and my husband were dating, he had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. Yeah, that made me leery, but like, I love the guy, I know, and from our conversations, I know that he's going to figure it out. I have faith in him, and I have faith that God will teach him how to figure it out. The man that my husband is now, everything he does is to provide for this family. Everything. He works 6 days a week to provide for this family. He has a very clear-cut vision on exactly what it is he wants to do, and then he executes what he wants to do. If I would have said to myself, I can't marry this man when I met him because of where he was at then, I mean, look at how different my life would be. We're very financially blessed because of what he's done over the years, what we've done together, what we've built over the years. So if I was to say like, man, he ain't got no job right now, that don't have anything to do with us now 8 years later from when we met, So I definitely wouldn't say shy away from the lack of someone looking like they've built a castle before marriage, because what four hands can build together, I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, baby. That was special. That was nice that you said that. I mean, I second that. I mean, don't you see a guy who is working and he may not have it right now, or even if he don't have a vision yet, if you know that God is leading you to this guy and he's faithful to God and he's trying to do his best to kind of mature and grow, because most men, almost all, well, I don't say most men, all men in their 20s, we ain't ready yet. We're growing. We don't know nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we may act like we know, but we don't know. Some guys may be more mature than others, but I feel like I thank God for my wife, because she betted on me. Obviously, she betted on God in me to kind of be able to, move forward with me and whatnot. And I'm glad that we are seeing all the things that we talked about. We got our daughter, here, and we are so blessed to have our family, and we're growing and whatnot. And the fact that that we're just in a good place, and I thank God for that. And we just got to keep learning. That's all.
And I can definitely tell you this. I think that wherever there was doubt or wherever there was fear, I think my conversations with God told me everything I needed to know about him in advance. So it was like when I would pray to God, God would tell me not to give up. God would tell me to be patient, and look at, where we are now. So if I would have given up on where he was then, or even there are stages in our relationship where he could have given up on me as well, because of where I may have been, so it's like, you can't really look at a situation and gauge, is this person ready to be my spouse? Am I ready to be this person's spouse just because of the season that you're in now? And like I said, talk to God about it. He's going to tell you everything you need to know, and then you go from there. Let us know in the comments, how do you know you're ready for marriage? What is your story? What is your testimony on this very subject,
All right. Good stuff.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. Like, share, subscribe, leave us some comments, some feedback on the topic for this episode. Like I said before, if this is your first time, thank you so much for joining us. And if you have come back with us for another week, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Leave some comments. We want to hear from you guys. Thanks again. Have a good one.